I want to welcome everyone to Low Connects. Really so grateful and excited to be here tonight. Well, tonight for us, not sure where everyone's joining us from. And I'm very grateful to Dustin Yellin for being here, rescheduled from Hurricane Ian. So really glad to be here for Dustin Yellin, Civilization is a Sculpture. My name is Jody Cipher. I'm the Curator of Education at the Lowe Art Museum. I'm just going to give you a few logistics before. If you need closed captioning, you can click the live transcript on your menu bar of the webinar. And during the program, you're invited, we hope you will, to type your questions in the Q&A feature. Dustin will do his best. I'm going to ask the questions. And then when you sign off from the webinar, there'll be a quick survey. We really appreciate you taking the time to fill it out. We really do read it and we use it to plan our future programs. So that's the survey that will pop up. And then save the date for next week. It's already November next week, November 2nd. At 6:30, we're having our next virtual talk, Decompose, Exploring the Intersections Between Art and Science, with artists Donna Davis and ecologists Amy Zane and Stephen Allison. It's a really interesting project, which you would probably like, Dustin. They created these really amazing looking works of art about decomposition from wood, termite, and fungi project. So you can register for that on our website. If you go to lowe.miami.edu, click events and calendar and click on November 2nd. Now, without any further delay, I would like to again thank our really distinguished guest, Dustin Yellin, and just introduce him. Dustin lives in Brooklyn, New York, but was born in California. He is the founder and director of Pioneer Works. His artwork has been exhibited lots of places, including the Brooklyn Museum, the City Museum, the Corning Museum of Glass, which I just saw the piece that's there today, very cool. The Kennedy Center, the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts, SCAD Museum, Tacoma Museum, amongst many others. Yellin is featured in diverse media, ranging from New York Times, Art Forum, Vanity Fair, and he led a really great TED Talk. I highly recommend you Google it. He holds an honorary doctorate of humane letters from SCAD. So without further ado, please give a virtual warm welcome to Dustin Yellin. I'm going to stop share.
Well, hello. We're just organizing these photos. It's pretty strange to do this virtually. I'm usually in a room with folks, and so I wish I could see everybody, but I guess you can't do that, right? So we're just getting these things fixed over here. I can't hear anyone either, right? It's just kind of like me talking.
Yeah, no, it's you and I talking, so everyone's listening though. But cool. I would love to hear more while you're waiting for your slides about your honorary.
Yeah. I mean, well, what was that? So,
I would love to hear about your honorary humane doctorate in humane letters from SCAD.
There's not much to say except that, well, I didn't finish high school, but it's pretty cool that they gave me an honorary doctorate. You know, I got to dress up in the gown and do the whole thing and give a talk to the graduating class, which was really fun.
So we should really call you Dr. Yellin then.
You can call me Dr. Yellin, yeah. So I'll just start by, I'm just going to run through some slides. It won't be such a long talk. There's plenty of time for Q&A. Something I always ask people when I meet them is usually, this question. It's usually my first question when I meet new people, which is, what do you think is the issue of our time? And, often we think about fires and floods, which is actually, related to why this talk was postponed, inequity, pollution, structural racism, overpopulation, the fear of viruses, whether they occur naturally or by, through warfare, which is a frightening prospect in our civilization right now with CRISPR and how easy it is to build things in a garage. Machine learning and artificial intelligence and the future of automation. I don't know how many of you here listening are playing with Dolly right now or Midjourney. I certainly am. And of course, the nuclear issue, which is something that we've been dealing with for quite a long time and is still very much in front of us, especially with what we're seeing overseas right now. And from governance to ecology, we tell ourselves tales, yet it seems that we truly have lost the plot. And while things seem delicate at the moment, I fear the real crisis is one of imagination. So storytelling, the way we perceive our world, is something I think about a lot. And I find it almost terrifying and surreal that we are living in the year 2022 and the state of our civilization is as such that we read in the news every day. And so I think it is a time where we need to tell new stories, and we need more and other authors, and we need to tell the story together differently. And I do that in many different ways. I do it with a sculpture practice, which is where I'm simply making drawings and collages on layers of glass. And so to think about, Leviathan, and think of the body being one of many bodies. I've been working on a project called Psychogeographies for a very long time now. I think it's been about 15 years, almost like playing cards. I think of the entire work as the whole body, no pun intended, as a single work. I've made about 120 psychogeographies. This is at Lincoln Center. This is a little bit more recent. And like playing cards, the reason I'm making about 150, 140, I haven't decided, is because I see them as one. And I hope as I age rapidly that groups of them will be brought together in public spaces and made accessible, where you can really almost walk through an archive of human consciousness that's sort of trapped in these 3,000-pound, almost like microscope slides, if you will. And I'm making painting.
Sorry, Justin, we're not seeing your slides. I don't know if you shared them or not.
Oh, you haven't seen any slides yet?
No.
Holy tamale.
I thought you were just talking before you.
I'm glad you said something.
Yeah, I didn't want to disrupt you either, but yeah, you have to share with sound too. So don't forget. There we go.
Okay. Well, I'll
got it now. Sorry, start over.
I'm not starting over, but I'm definitely going to tell you, I just asked you that question, and I mentioned some fires and some floods. I made it a little more just, inequity, right? So this is what I was talking about: overpopulation, artificial intelligence, the bomb, glass. I said that I make drawings, collages on layers of glass, like the terracotta warriors, or like Leviathan, many bodies, the one body. These are the psychogeographies I was speaking about at Lincoln Center. These are recent psychogeographies, like an archive of human consciousness trapped in these 3,000-pound blocks. Each one of these takes about 6 months. As you can see, I'm just painting right on the glass. I went into the scale of the project. This one is new, where I really am thinking about like the Theia hypothesis, the moon being a part of the earth, the body being part of the earth, the idea that cells and stars are the same thing, and that we're all made of water and arising and drowning in water. So a lot of these bodies are either made of water or are in water. You can kind of see where I have a library downstairs and I'm cutting up books and magazines. I have my own sort of taxonomy, drawers of mushrooms and drawers of icebergs and drawers of machines, drawers of pieces of architecture that I can then build. And I think we're going to have a different relationship to paper as time goes on. And I think, we are in the beginnings of a silicone-based mutation. So I love found paper. I love cutting up books and magazines and classifying them and then using them to build these sculptures. and adding paint sort of to create a narrative arc sometimes within the sculptures. So you can kind of see what's going on here. The trees you see are drawn, and the planets are drawn, and the flowers drawn, and so it's a lot of mixture of paper and painting within the works. And I will say, I hope some of you have seen the work in real life, because this work does not translate. This is a 3,000-pound sculptures made out of 28 layers of glass with marks on every single layer and shadows. And so you're not seeing it. One of the challenges lately has been, how do I take this work into the landscape and not worry about it in the elements? And so this is something that I'm doing right now. This is going to be an 11-foot stainless steel sculpture. And the working title is Emergence, and you can't see it right now. I'm not sure if we'll see if there's a slide, but it's all emerging out of a star map, which is on the bottom of the sculpture. And in the star map is the 1919 solar eclipse that Eddington observed from Principe to observe the way light was bending to help prove the general relativity, right? So hopefully the next slide, I'm not sure, is a star map, but since I'm not sure it's there, I'm going to keep going. The star map's on the bottom. There's an ear, an actual human ear made out of stainless steel, listening to the waves come from the eclipse. And then there's life, almost these sort of Egyptian or, very simple line drawings that are coming out of the eclipse in 2 dimensions and wrapping around. And then you have at the very bottom right foot, a cat dog, the head of a cat with the ass of a dog being bitten by a snake that's coming off the foot and biting the ass of the dog. And the head, which is a cat, is looking in a toilet at its reflection, like Narcissus. And there's instructions that come with the sculpture to keep the toilet filled with water. And the toilet sitting on a Rubik's Cube made out of a periodic table of elements. And then as life goes from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions, you have a penguin that's hitting a light switch to the universe. You have a battery operated frog licking a bagel that is a black hole. You have Bernini's column as a can. You have an elephant that's being driven by an astronaut dog. And the piece kind of keeps unwinding. And inside the volcano is a council of pigeon astronauts. This is how it'll look this will be in Toronto, outside permanently, stainless steel. And I'm really excited about this because I can take the complexity of what you saw happening in the psychogeographies into the outdoors. And I find something that's really challenging with public art in the landscape is it often really works from 40 or 30, 50, whatever feet away. But then when you put your nose up against it, it loses its magic. And so with this sculpture, I'm really trying to figure out ways for the viewer to enjoy it up close and from a distance. I think Anish Kapoor's Jelly Bean in Chicago does a good job of that, but there's a lot of sculptures that I feel work really well only from a distance. These are some early renderings, but note to self to put in the Council of Pigeons and some other, and the floor plate for the next time I do this talk, note to self. But this is an early rendering. It's actually evolved a lot, sculpture, and will be permanently in Toronto soon. This is a cool sculpture. This is called the Triptych. I did this, I believe, in 2012, and it's a very heavy sculpture. So I didn't learn how to modulate at scale yet. And so this is 24,000 pounds. So it's 12 tons of glass over 3 sections. It's just called the Triptych. And on the left, you have, let's see if I can, you have this like almost like a blood fountain with all these creatures dancing around it. And you have Jesus and the locust and the volcano exploding and all this weird stuff happening. And then you have all the creatures kind of jumping into the ocean around the lighthouse. You have there's a bird god tied up to a battleship. This is the figure spitting oil. We need to put more. See, this is, but anyways, let's go back to this one. There, so you really get a better sense. In the middle panel, you see the bird god tied up to the battleship. You see this woman rising out of the ocean and she's spitting oil or the darkness into her left hand, and she has clouds coming out of her right hands, and her hands are kind of like scales, right? So a lot of allegorical painting that I'm looking at. I learned a lot from this picture. My oceans have become transparent. So you see under them now. This isn't really working. As we move on, you'll start to see the progression of these specific works. But obviously, I'm thinking a lot about history, our relationship to the earth, relationship between nature and culture is something I have a hard time with. You've got Buckminster domes floating off into space on the right panel on an oil platform. Hard to see this picture without seeing real life, but you know, this is another one. This is good for scale, but a little kid looking up at it. This is the whole world melting. And then, you know, basically the ocean falling off the edge of the world, which you see here. This is the right panel where the kid is. Yeah. So it's kind of cool to see that. Yeah. This piece I really like. This is newer. And this is called The Politics of Eternity. And this is the future mirroring the past. So on the left side, you have, up at the top, I'm building a brave new world, a rocket, a hyperloop, and a particle accelerator, which is that box, the square. And on the right side, you have the past. So exactly where the particle accelerator exists in the future, there's a cave of minerals in the past. And the future is inhabited by astronauts, and the past is inhabited by animal-headed humans. They're extracting the minerals, carrying them through the mountain to build a totemic antenna to the gods, which is the same scale and position as the rocket in the future. And underneath the ocean in the past is Group Sisyphus, where they're pushing a boulder to capture a sea monster who's eating the boats. That same scene is happening in the same place in the future, but it's astronauts pushing a machine to capture data that's coming out of the sea. And everything in the future, like the tree growing on the left side, is growing in the same place on the right side. Or in the past, there's a field of mushrooms, and that's mirrored in the same place in the future by a field of lights. And next to that field of lights is a cluster of satellites by the moon, which is mirrored by dinosaurs by the sun. And underneath the sun, you see Icarus, yeah? And so past and future are represented by fluid dynamics, by water, by two oceans falling into a third in the middle, where you have Mars, the god of war, and a supertanker sinking as an allegory to the ark with animals coming out. And if you were in the room with this piece, you would see inside the cliffs, oceanic, Roman, Egyptian, many art histories hidden inside the piece. It's called The Politics of Eternity. So here's some details, right? So that's the data coming out of the ocean. That's the field of lights on the ledge of the cliff. You see the astronauts climbing into the mountain. This is the other side. You see the field of mushrooms and the sun, the dinosaurs, and some of the minerals being hoisted up to build that antenna. Waterfall in the future. And this is an animation based on that sculpture.
Doth the little crocodile, and roamed his shining tail, and for the waters of the Nile on every golden scale, how cheerful he seems to grin, how neatly spreads his paws, what those little fishes eat, his gently smiling jaws, how heavy the white mirror, as the politics of eternity.
That's a little video work that's still in progress, and I'm pretty excited about. But are stories merely interpretive, or can they actually make change? It's something I think about a lot. And I definitely think of this idea of what happens when description is played against prescription. And so I very much feel like I have a descriptive practice of making animations and paintings and sculptures. And then I have a prescriptive practice. Oh, but here's one more thing before we get in there. This is pretty cool. All of you can download this for free. And it's a little game where there's about 40 endangered animals. And if you find 10 inside of it, the whole world burns and floods. So I scanned the layers of one of my sculpture. I put it all in Unity. I added all these videos and animations, and I gamified it. NASA made that sun. It took 10 years to make that time lapse. Octopus in the water. It's called Procession AR. It's really cool. You can play with it if you like. As our habitats collapse, I think we need to envision a new house of being, one in which access to tools, ideas, and most of all, a place where different minds are placed in proximity and left to spark off of each other. So, like medicine and public health, this house should not merely provide a remedy for the ills of society, but it could be a model as a preventative and progressive other system that builds the conditions to achieve that which we previously thought was impossible. And the way I've done that in my small way is by starting this project called Pioneer Works, where I took a defunct brick building built in 1866. Did no idea what I was doing. It's a 10-year anniversary. It looks a little bit like this now. It's admission free to the public. So you're all invited if you come up this way or you are this way. We have gardens. In the gardens, there's a recording studio and a ceramics studio. This was an Anthony McCall exhibition. We often have the Amateur Astronomy Society of New York in our gardens. We actually had 2,000 people line up to watch the eclipse, I think in 2017. We have a lot of public programs, performances. We have everything from Richard Dawkins one night to Bon Iver the next, to Gloria Steinem to Roger Penrose. I mean, it's a pretty wild place. And so which operating system needs an update is something I also ask people. Is it our education system? What do you all think? Transdisciplinarity is something that is the sort of seed of this entire cultural center. That is like the heart of this building. We have technology labs. We have exhibition spaces. We have a residency program. We have a media lab. It is almost like a liberal arts school, but open to the public and free, and where all those houses of knowledge are sort of open to each other. And what about the soul? Dream no small dreams, for they have no power to move the hearts. And so this is a project that I've been working on for many, many years. And much like Super Studio or Archigram, it's a conceptual piece of paper architecture at the moment. We'll see where it goes. It's called the Bridge. It's very simple reuse. We're taking a super tanker, a very large boat, and we're going to lift it. It's going to be the largest lift in the history of our species. And then we're coding it for about 1.5 million people a year to go up to the bridge and learn about the transition from hydrocarbon economics into renewables and into new ways of powering the earth. And we're going to make it mission control for the climate data. So satellite data, projection map inside the hall as you're in a glass elevator going up to the bridge. People will pay to go up there, and then those proceeds will go to conservation. So it's a huge civic, public-private partnership to build this monument. This is if it were in London, in a fjord, Governor's Island. And we have to remember that what we observe is not nature herself, but nature exposed to our method of questioning. And so I got to ask what questions we're asking, like, why are we where we are? And what is intelligence? And what is consciousness? That's something I think about a lot. That could be a whole other talk. And is it only human? You guys have probably seen this, but this is the Tokyo subway system mapped by a slime mold to use nature to help us figure out the best way to build. I don't know, I'm sure a bunch of you have already seen this, but I find it fascinating. It also looks like dendrites and natural phenomena. Perhaps it's a network. You all have seen this before, I imagine. What looks very much like that. So in closing, I'll just reiterate that I do feel that our real crisis is not of our lack of our ability to build a new civilization or our lack of technology, but it's really our inability to cooperate as a species. It's in our inability to build new narratives to how we relate to one another and how we think about some big ideas like the state and religion and race and humanity and these larger narratives that for thousands of years have been like coursing through us. And so that's why I fear that our crisis is one of imagination, because we could reimagine a world that is one in which there is harmony and clean energy and clean cities, and our schools wouldn't look the way they do and our governance models wouldn't feel the way they do. And so a few folks before me have said that art is a lie to reveal the truth. It's that is the idea here. So thankfully it's not just us. There are a lot of us with this dream, and civilization is a sculpture. This whole thing is malleable. We've built everything from the technology that I'm talking to you all on to the shelters that you all inhabit to the plumbing that you're using. And so I think we really could build anything. There you go. Now we can do Q&A. So weird to do this virtually. I much prefer if you all came over to do this.
I wish we could have come there. Yeah, maybe next time we can have you in person. It would be great. But we love having you. Really appreciate you doing it virtually, because it really gives, as you say, accessibility to many more people to watch it later and to watch it again. And so that's really what these virtual programs are about for us. So I'm sure you appreciate that based on everything you just said. So please type your questions in the Q&A or the chat, whichever you want to do. I'm wondering though, is that your studio behind you? Where are you?
Yeah, but I'm not on a laptop where I could give you a tour.
Oh, okay, bummer. Yeah, so we would love to, everyone should go to Red Hook, right? It's in Red Hook, your studio, Pioneer Works is in Red Hook?
Yeah, my studio and Pioneer Works are next to each other. Two separate organizations, separate teams, one that I work with.
So I know you probably said this before, but for our audience's purposes, I'm curious if you go back to the triptych a little bit. You don't have to go back to it physically, but I know you mentioned that you were inspired by Harmonious Bosch's work, The Garden of Earthly Delights, for that. I'm wondering who else influences you on a daily basis, since you seem to look at so much and be around so much art. And are you just looking at everything all the time? Are you sketching all the time?
Yeah, I mean, the influences are really vast. It's not, first of all, it's not just art. I mean, I love Max Ernst and I love Hokusai, but I also love Emily Dickinson and Rilke and, rocks. I spend a lot of time just in nature looking at rocks. So you know, it's really vast, right? I'm playing with AI right now just to see what it does. I'm inspired by all of these things, and I don't really have a hierarchical sense of what, you know, I love Joseph Cornell, but I also love uh oceanic art like Asmat art from Papua New Guinea, or um yeah, it's not, it's there, you know, I feel like we as humans just touch on so little, meaning if I just read Russian literature for the rest of my life, I would still not necessarily be a scholar because there's so much, and the meanings run so deep to really analyze. So I feel like that about so many different bodies of knowledge.
Great. Yeah, I imagine that you're such a storyteller that, I mean, did you write growing up, and did you write, do you still write now? Or I mean, are you writing, do you have the idea first, it evolves as you go on? Like, how are you building these massive
No, a lot of like,
biographies?
I wish I could bring you around the studio now, but yeah, a lot of maps, a lot of works on paper that are then the maps to the larger sculptures, a lot of sketches, a lot of small sculptures that are often the maps to the larger sculptures. So all of these things feed into each other.
And is it, as I know you had a lot of trial and error before when you started with resin and then you moved to the glass. Is there, it seems to me that, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's a certain number of sheets of glass, there's sheets, right?
Yeah, obviously resin is more toxic, so I wanted to stop using the resin, and so that's why I started using the glass. And it was a great thing, and also with the glass, I could go backwards, which I wasn't, I just needed to stop using resin for all of the obvious reasons. And with the glass, I can move the sheets back and forth. So I can spend, like on the Politics of Eternity, I and 5 people spent 2 years. So there's about 20,000 hours of hands that were moving 7 stacks of glass on 14 tables for 2 years.
Wow. And you're putting, I saw in one of the early photos, you had them sort of separated by just bits of the cardboard, or?
It's cork, yeah. So that's just move
Cork.
them back and forth, back and forth.
So I see, so you're moving them and seeing what works.
Yeah, or building almost like a movie, right? Building a landscape and then populating the landscape with narrative. So
Right, and so was this, it's almost, it reminds me of, you know, like a microscope slide. I don't know if that was conscious choice or not.
that's just kind of what happened. Yeah.
Is this what
A
happened?
lot of the work has happened through experimentation and being curious, and oh well, what happens if I do that, or what happens, you know, I'm working on a show right now of paintings, collage paintings, that'll happen in May. And you know, I'm learning, you know, I finish 1 or 2 and then I learn from it, and oh well, now I want to change it. So a lot of it just happens in the process.
Great. Someone wants to know, do you have and express some visions for food production and the horizontal rural part of futurism? Not sure what that means.
What's the question? What is it?
Do you have and express some visions for food production and the horizontal rural part of futurism?
Oh, I mean, I think that we have, I mean, that's not really my area of expertise, but I definitely think that there are a lot of really incredible people working on, you know, ways to take the methane out of cows by using kelp. There's, you know, growing leather. So, you know, a lot of great scientists are working on that right now. Yeah, it's not really my field, but I sat with a lot of people, and I'm very interested and curious about how that stuff scales.
But none of your work is about the food production in particular or agricultural. It's parts of it.
I mean, there's like vignettes maybe within, but that's not what it's about.
Right.
Yeah.
Someone has a sort of challenging question. They said, you started by talking about natural disaster, fires, floods, viruses, inequity. What's your carbon footprint for making and transporting your heavy objects?
We're actually looking into that right now, so I can't tell you exactly what it is, but again, like switching from resin to glass was a way of bringing that down, and also just being thoughtful if, you know, how we ship work, and if there's a if there's a show in a certain city and there's a collector in a certain city, is there a way to combine those things so that it works not moving back and forth, which happens a lot. So you just do your best to move towards that.
Thank you for answering that.
Of course.
I'm wondering too about, sorry, I'm just not scrolling down. There's more questions here. Sorry about that, everyone. Somebody says, perhaps you can make one of your sculptures spin. They are amazing. I want to dissect your brain. It's overflowing. I first saw one of your sculptures in the Corning Museum of Glass and was thrilled to see one at the Lowe. I was drawn first to the shadow created on the wall at the Lowe by the light. So wondering, I guess if there's a question there, and a comment. Do you?
Well, we do spin them. So I guess if you went on my Instagram, you'd see videos of them spinning. So we do spin them. I don't leave them on a spinning apparatus, but when I'm documenting them, I spin them. And light is very important. So I don't know how you all have it lit at your museum, but for instance, the Corning Museum, it needs more light. So maybe someone can send them a note. No, but the light is key for this work. I mean, it's like live or die, really.
Right. Someone wants to know how you title or name your work.
It's very much like how the coffee tasted that day. For me, it's about how you feel when you're with the work. I don't want to be in the room telling you about the work. The title is just like a playful, how I felt that day. Also, maybe a way for me to organize a system of objects into the future. And sometimes they're more meaningful than others, but to me, it's more about how you feel with the actual artwork. And, sometimes I'll say, oh, that's called Thea hypothesis because the moon's coming out of the stomach, or, sometimes I'll be more playful, or it's just, a song that I love, or a film that I love, or a book that I love, or some weird reference. But I'm not, who was it? Robert Rauschenberg was like, someone was like, will you write a paragraph about your art for this book? And he was like, Goshkash, Gushkabaski, Ha Haulini Baski, Bushkos, Boski, Aski, Aski, Huagi, Cookie Monkey. You like Cookie Monkey? Cookie Monkey.
That's awesome. I can't agree with you more. And as an educator here for 15 years, leading tours to lots of different visitors of multiple ages, we try to get that point across that once you, sorry, my light went off, I have to move for it to come back on. Once you make the art and it's out there, you bring to it whatever you're experiencing or thinking about at that moment, and it's yours. So I love that.
Visual work. So, I work with writers and sometimes I write about my own work and sometimes I work with friends who are curators, and they're amazing. Like they'll talk about the work infinitely more intelligently than me. And so I just want to make the stuff. I'm going to be dead soon. You know what I mean? Like I'm out this world. And so, yeah.
Somebody wants to know, is the new stainless steel sculpture that's going to be in Toronto influenced by Rodin's Gates of Hell?
Yes, that's funny you say that. That's definitely one of the influences. And in fact, I did an edition of 3 legs, how Rodin did body parts. So there is like a mini edition influenced by it of 3 legs. So, but yes, good eye. Yeah,
that's an artist speaking as well. And I'm wondering, this is my question, is there a reason why you went, that's a monochromatic piece and not choosing to have that sculpture be in color?
The stainless steel?
Yeah.
Because I'm really, one of the joys that I foresee of working with stainless steel is I love the idea that I can drop it in Antarctica and it's going to be fine. And so if I were to paint it, even with the best materials to go outside, which is something I may try to do with other ones and something I'm interested in, I'm still going to have to go back to it in 20 years and like, oh, and it'll look cool, but like, it's not going to be unchanged the way that this will be.
Great. just a comment, it's amazing that each layer of glass, when melted and quotes together, all have the same index of refraction. The light does not seem to bend or change in speed. So I imagine you worked on that.
And it moves. It moves when you move.
Yeah, and that you can see through when you look to the side, you don't see anything, but you just see through the other, clear straight through, which is really fascinating. I always have people come up and they talk about it sitting in front of it, and then I have them come up and look at the side, and they're just blown away. I'm sure you heard it. Somebody wants to know, what does your tattoo say?
Which one?
I don't know.
I have a Dubuffet from 1949 right here, and then I have the princess from the Tale of Genji here, and then I have a friend of mine's initials here, and this one is a joke with a friend of mine, but it says based on a true story, and that's an Ernst Haeckel single cell organism that he drew at the turn of the century, and I'm probably forgetting some.
Thank you. Someone says, do you have any suggestions as to how the themes of your work can be brought to people in different places, like Miami or elsewhere in Florida? For example, to move us imaginatively on a civic, in addition to individual bases. I'm not sure there was a typo there.
I'm not clear on the question.
Yeah, you and me both. Let me try again. So I guess they're saying, how can you move the conversation, move us imaginatively, and have more civic discourses? And
well, maybe I'll build the bridge in Miami.
Yeah. Well, how did you get the idea for that project?
Really, sillily, is that a word? Sillily. I live on the water here on the Hudson, and I look at the Lady Liberty every day, and I watch the boats go by, and I just, wow, if I just pick up a boat, it would be this incredible assisted ready-made. And then that like unfolded into this idea of an oil tanker. And then I learned about observation deck economics. And I was like, wow, this could be actually a machine for sustainability, for revenue, for conservation through a communication. Like, so it just developed it's still developing over a lot of years. There's even a movie getting made about it called Delusions of Grandeur.
That's great. Somebody wants to know, what is your smallest work, and is the triptych the largest work? Which do you prefer?
Well, I think of Pioneer Works as my largest work as a social practice. So Pioneer Works is probably my largest sculpture yet as a social practice. I think, yeah, The Politics of Eternity, The World in 10 Parts, and the Triptych are three of the largest sculptures, certainly in the glass.
And are you still making more psychogeographies?
And I would say the psychogeographies might be the largest work too, as a single work. And I am slowly eking them out.
So you mentioned this briefly, but I have to ask for our own benefit here at the Lowe with our piece that's on loan, Navel of the World, which now that we know that your titles are just a small part or whatever coffee. By the way, what coffee do you drink?
Whatever they could give me. You know?
Whatever.
I like a French press. I like a French press.
French press, okay, got it. The circles, you mentioned that they were both organisms and the earth. Obviously, ours, it's the navel, or it's multiple things. People were saying that it reminds them of chakras. Is that part of it?
It's kind of like whatever you see, yeah. But I kind of think of like, you close your eyes and you think of star systems, or you think biologically of cell systems. I like the idea of those two systems merging.
So I'm assuming you're a fan of Stargate.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's every time you were talking, I'm just geeking out. That's all I was thinking about with the Egyptian and the circles. So
one of my favorite things to do is I've become a bona fide eclipse chaser. So I went to the South Pole this year and I saw a total solar eclipse, and it like blew my mind beyond all recognition.
So that was with the telescope you have at Pioneer Works, or no?
No. The total solar eclipse was just me in in the Antarctica with some friends
Oh, you're right now.
outside. You
Oh,
just,
amazing.
the next one for all of you that is easy to get to is April 8th, 2024. And it's a diagonal, the path of totality is a diagonal line from Mazatlan, Mexico up to Maine. So if you can get in that line and get in that line where there will likely not be clouds, you'll have like one of the coolest experiences of your life.
Wow, sounds great. We get there. Someone wants to know, do you have any recommendations for resins that are suitable for outdoor public art that could survive okay for 15 or so years? I know of some resins that advertise themselves as such, but thought I'd ask since you are an expert.
Well, I'm not an expert anymore because I kind of stopped using resin years ago, right, with the glass. So, you know, a great artist to ask for that would be Rachel Whiteread. She's really good with that. I'm just not, you know, there's new material sciences are changing so fast. I'm sure for 15 years you could find an acrylic, a cast that you could have cast that would do that, but I'm not an expert anymore.
Thank you. Someone says, I saw the Instagram post about transporting an Easter island with ropes by walking it, and it made me think of a walking a psychogeography to its installation. I don't know if you're following that.
I follow that, but nowadays I use a little gantry, or if it's possible, a forklift.
All right, I'm just scrolling through to see more questions. So I know you said that you're always making more. So what do you, besides the stainless steel piece, what are you working on right now? I mean, it sounds like you're always working on multiple things.
I wish I could pick this computer up. I should have done it on a laptop next time. You know, I'm working on sculptures downstairs. I have a show of painting collages coming up at a gallery called Venus over Manhattan, which will be the first week of May in New York. But Venus over Manhattan, it's an art gallery. We'll have one of these sculptures and a couple of paintings in their booth at this art fair called Miami Basel. I think that's near you, Basel. And you say it's near you. So they'll have some.
Yeah, we kind of heard of that.
It's called Venus over Manhattan. He has a pretty great eye. I'm working on, you know, the animations. I'm kind of working on all these things, these new paintings. I could show you maybe like a picture of, you know, what? Let's see.
I know you have a big team there. When you say I'm working on, is it everyone working on the things with you, or how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. Look at, can anyone see that? Let's see. Oh, how's that work?
A little bit. Oh yeah. Very cool.
Hard to see like that.
Hard to see.
Yeah. But I'm you know, I'm growing Pioneer Works. I'm working on I'm like a miner. I'm like in a cave, just like eking it out, all these different projects.
And sorry, I still have more questions about the psychogeography. So I'm just picturing your studio with, you said there's just files of drawers with like, you know, drawers of cutouts of certain objects that you have at the ready. So do you just have people just give you magazines? I mean, you're sort of recycling in that way.
I'm a garbage picker, so I'm always looking for books and magazines in the garbage. I'm always on like, you know, eBay. Now at this point, people know, they're like, oh, my grandmother has, you know, 500 Nat Geos. I'm just going to drop them off. So, you know, every which way I can get them.
I literally just got the same thing. Somebody's emailed me because they know that's me. I'm any art teacher, right? Or any artist. They were like, I have thousands of years worth of National Geo magazines. Do you want them? And I was like, yes. So
Definitely.
And that. But I'm just wondering, do you find them at the right size, or do you shrink them down to fit? They have to be exactly that size.
I prefer, I mean, I have for a few projects printed things and scaled things, but in general, I really like found images. So I'm actually looking always for like the particular scales that I need.
Right, so to find the one that we have here, the navel of the world, there's so many little
Yeah.
people and little penguins and fish. They all had to be, I mean, you must have spent hours scouring through. I can't imagine how long, I know you talked about this before, how long does it take to make each one?
Well, they're all different, but at the long end of things, the politics of eternity took 20,000 hours. So
Wow.
that's a long time.
That's a long
You
time.
know, some pieces take 6 months. It really depends on the work.
And some of them have different bases than others. Is that the base has meaning? I know ours is sort of like almost like a tombstone.
Usually they're all tombstones with the names of my assistants engraved on the bottom.
But the other ones that you showed were like more of a pedestal.
Oh, the psychogeographies are always on tombstones. Yeah, the other
Okay.
ones go on sort of stainless steel armatures and all kinds of different things.
And are you making those there as well? In the
I
studio?
usually prototype things in the studio if I can, and then if I can use a fab shop for those, I do, because I don't want to take the energy away from like my process, which is so bespoke, and I'd rather use the energy for that.
Great. So I'm wondering since we're part of the University of Miami, we have lots of aspiring, not just artists, but musicians and scientists. I'm wondering what advice or words of wisdom you would have for them.
Oh Lord, oh Lord.
I know, I gave you a tough one, sorry.
That's okay. But no, I would just say, if you're like questioning it, like making art, then maybe do something else, because it sucks and it's so hard. And like get to a place where you're really making a living, you shouldn't question it. Like if you're questioning it, do something else. Like seriously, go into graphic design or something. Because like my early days in New York, I'd be like begging. I basically was a beggar in the street. And I'd be like, buy this for $1,000. You want my painting? $1,000. And they'd be like, no. I'd be like, $500. I'd be like, no. How $100? I'd be like, no. I'd be like, take it. I literally would be like, take the painting. And I figured if 9 out of 10 people took the painting, hung it on the wall, 9 people walked the room, like, what is that piece of shit? And one person was like, I love that painting. I was like, yeah, I got one fan. And like one at a time. You know what I mean? So it's just all I'd say is perseverance and determination and belief in yourself that anything is possible is those are all really important attributes, to keep going.
How did you get your first big break then?
I don't know if there was any first big breaks. It was like all small fissions or whatever, all like a little crackety crack and a little oogity do and a bit of that boom. You know what I mean? It wasn't like boom ever.
Well, that's great. I mean, congratulations on your success and perseverance.
But getting your work out there is great. Like if you're making work, I always tell people, like, if you can't sell it, give it away. Look at it like the ideas are like a disease, right? Ideas are like infectious, right? We know that to be true, that ideas are infectious. So if you can get your idea out of your studio and into another place, then maybe it will infect some people. And then they're like, oh, what is that thing? Do you know what I mean? And then something might happen. If you do that enough times, something could happen.
Great advice. Someone wants to know, can you recommend 3 books? How would you choose 3? I don't know.
I got 3 books. I like Joseph Beuys's lectures. There's a book called Energy Plan for the Western Man. That's a good book of essays by Joseph Beuys, a great artist. Another book, I don't know, God, Rebecca Elson poetry book called, is it? Oh, well, she only has one. So Rebecca Elson poetry book is really beautiful. I like the Wind Up Bird Chronicle. It's a book by Murakami. But I mean, God, that's like such a weird question. 3 books. I like Underland. That's a recent book by Robert McFarlane about subterranean spaces, deep time. God, has everybody here seen? God, I could go into books. Everybody here seen Fitzcarraldo? Raise your hands, but I can't see you. Shit. A movie by Werner Herzog. It's Fitzcarraldo's. I love that movie. Another great movie to watch, visual movie that's really inspiring, is called The Color of Pomegranates. So it's 2 movies. You want a third, A Face in the Crowd. Kazan directed that movie. So that's 3 books, 3 movies. What else do we want? I like Rilke. That's a great poet. I like Artaud's, some of Artaud's writings. There's a book of his writings that Susan Sontag put together, this great anthology of Antonin Artaud that I love, especially when I was younger. There's a book called The Crack-Up, which Edmund Wilson put together of F. Scott Fitzgerald's writings and notes. I really like that. I'm jumping around now. Jesus.
Where do you store it all?
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
music.
somebody says, have you considered raising, I guess they mean in height, the psychogeographies so that people can get a better view of what's occurring near the bottom? Children seem to notice the items because of their perspective.
Yeah, I've thought more on the other side of it, which is like to accompany them with small ladders. I like that they're very almost one-to-one, and I like that, but I've definitely thought about adding accoutrement so that people like me who are little can get up tall.
The museums would never allow such a thing because you know what happens with the ladder, then they want to brace themselves and they'll touch it.
I don't mind.
Just a thought. All right, so somebody just wanted to know also, do you collect slides? I guess when we were talking about collecting the
I collect everything. Does anybody know what the Barnes collection is in Philadelphia? So I don't die young and I get old, I will probably have to build my own version of that, where you'll have, you know, artifacts from Papua New Guinea next to drawings from, you know, living artists like Ernesto Caivano or Hope Gangloff next to, you know, selenite or quartz or malachite or turbinite or, you know, different rocks next to, you know, scrapbooks from the turn of the century. I mean, I am, you know, I think objects have next to weird 18th century daggers. So what was the question?
That was great. Do you collect slides with the
Yes,
question?
yes, I do, and I use slides in the work sometimes, definitely.
And daggers. No, that's a perfect picture of what you're talking about. If anyone hasn't gone to the Barnes Museum and seen the gallery there and the collection or read about Mr. Barnes and his method.
Well, just watch the movie. The what is it? The Art of the Steal. It's a great documentary.
Agreed. All right, so I know we're at time and I really, really want to thank you for your generosity in doing this almost twice with us and for all of your great answers and the inspiration. Next time we'll have you in person so we can do this the way you want. So thank you everyone for joining, and don't forget to fill out the survey when you exit and to join us next Wednesday, November 2nd for our next virtual talk. Thank you so much. It was so great.